One thing I've always wanted to know more about in the Super Mario Bros. Franchise isn't even what's in the games themselves, and is actually what was left out. Where through the years, I've only seen a few examples of this through small glimpses in early trailers and a few tech demos. Recently, I discovered a site called The Cutting Room Floor that goes through the game's files and archives all the unused things, with me thinking it would be a good idea to look at exactly that. Where truly, there's some wacky things that Nintendo's removed that you wouldn't even imagine. Now, before I get started with this amazing video, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. Of course, the very first game to be released in the series is Super Mario Bros. For the NES, having two things that didn't make it to the final form of the game, starting with the unused tree branch obstacle. It looks like this was either an early version of the vine, or just a different type of climbing thing that allowed you to get much higher up on a stage. Acting is essentially the exact same as well. You can see how rudimentary this looks, and the horrid sound it makes when you're on the thing. So obviously this is some sort of early concept that just never came to fruition. The other thing I want to mention is a feature that was supposed to be in the game, but got left out due to a bug, in the way that the spiny egg behaves when it's thrown by the Lakitu. In the game, you see it just falls straight down onto the stage, where originally, it was coded to hone in on Mario and fall more in par to where he is. Interestingly, this was fixed for Super Mario Maker, and actually makes this already annoying foe even tougher to face off against. Next to be released in North America is Super Mario Bros. 2, having a few unused things I want to look at, starting with some character models and items that have missing frames. This can be seen in the Albatos and the POW blocks, where for some reason both have a single frame that's been omitted, where if you look at the two different ones side by side, you can really see the insane difference. The other is a death noise that seems as if it was supposed to be in the game, but was accidentally coded over, sounding a lot like a strange droplet of water. I think this is based off the Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic death sound, but with it being essentially the same game, that doesn't really surprise me too much. The final installment of the original NES trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 3, released in 1990, having a few unused things I want to showcase, starting with the yellow or golden Cheep Cheep. This apparently was only to be found within a level that never appeared in the game, and would swim in a strange wavy pattern. Also, look at this very odd creature that moves a lot like the blooper, but looks like it should be in a horror movie. In future videos, I want to go more in depth looking at unused levels, so if you have any suggestions from any games in the series, then please let me know in the comments below. Another enemy that looks like it was cut late in the title's development is the green parabeetle, that I think would have been found in World 5-6, but also could have been seen in a few unused levels. This variant would have flown way faster than the regular red versions that you see, and I think that the downfall of this foe was probably due to how annoying it was to face off against. Finally are the different unused level palettes that really would have changed the looks and feels of the stages, which include a green variant of the castle stages, a nighttime version of the Giant Land stage, and a plain stage with the sky that has a pinkish hue. I'd have to guess that at the end of the day, these are probably cut to save memory, but it is interesting to see that just a few color differences can drastically change the way a stage looks. The only unused thing from the sequel to the Japanese original, released eventually in North America under the title The Lost Levels, is a funny little cactus. This would have been nothing but a background tile that wouldn't interact with anything in the game at all, but I just find it really cute and felt like I had to show it off. The first handheld game to be created in the series is Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, containing an unused obstacle I want to look at and a random lift block that was supposed to be in World 4-1. This would have been placed within one of the blocks that now contains a super mushroom, and standing on it would have just instantly taken you to the end of the stage. Although this takes away any risk factor and just makes the level unfun to play. Up next is the Super Mario World SNES entry, where if you perform the Infinite Lives exploit using the method involving the two Wigglers, then you'll see some unused bonus markers that you've never seen before. Pulling this method off is pretty tricky, as you have to jump between the two foes while taking one off screen so it resets and the bonus can continue. progressing in the strange order of 1-ups, 2-ups, 3-ups, 5-ups, then 10 coins, 15 coins, 20 coins, then ending off with a glitch number of several coins. Seeing that those crazy amount of lives have been accounted for in some way means that they were probably meant to be in the final game and were taken out at some point, but still can be seen by doing this glitch in Forest of Illusion 1 for some reason. The second handheld entry in the franchise also came out for the Game Boy called Super Mario Land 2, having only one unused thing that I could find in the words "happy" written out in a part of the stage that you could never see. This is in the top left corner of the Space Zone's Moon stage, where other than looking at the map online, there's no way of actually getting to this message. And even a thing like the bubble glitch is no good, as you can't perform it in the Space Zone. If you're somewhat skilled, you can platform upwards using the hidden blocks, and just see the Y amongst the stars. But that's pretty much it. The first game to be set within the 3D realm is Super Mario 64 for the N64, having a bunch of animations that never made it to the final product, starting with a blizzard that was supposed to occur on top of Cool Mountain. Here you can see the snow falling much faster than usual, but of course, this makes literally no real difference to the gameplay, so it was probably scrapped just to save a little bit of memory. Next, I want to look at unused character animations that were removed for one reason or another, where I'll just quickly list off each one and what their function was supposedly supposed to be. The most notable are Mario putting on his cap much faster, Mario performing a weird front roll, Mario landing in a cross-legged fashion, Mario feeling sick probably due to some sort of poison, a bully getting knocked off their feet instead of being knocked back, the Mips bunny landing funny after being thrown, the monkey landing funny after being thrown, a Koopa waking up from a nap, Bowser getting up after being tossed, Bowser being defeated in a very different way, and finally, the Chuckia balancing itself for some unknown reason. Next to be released and also in the 3D realm is Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube, where there are some absolutely insane unused things that have been found in the game's files, starting here with some objects that were taken out. These include the ice cream cart, where you could have bounced off the top of its awning, a soccer ball and goal, where scoring probably gave you a prize like a blue coin, a drum can, which could have been thrown or bonked off of, a door that swings open and shut and acts like the doors from Super Mario 64, and a rock block that I think somewhere was replaced by the watermelon block, as they act the exact same. There's actually a crazy amount of unused objects in this game, so you better bet that I'm going to return to this topic in the future. I mean, that is, if you all want me to. Next, I want to look at a couple enemies that really could and maybe should have been in Super Mario Sunshine, where I'd have to say that the best is the masked/unmasked foe that's called the Hinokuri 2. This giant enemy strolled violently around the courses it was supposed to be in, spawning strolling stews and eggs from its body, being an absolute menace to Mario. At times, it would have been seen with a demonic, Zelda-like mask over its face, that in some way or another, could have been designed to cover a weaker underbelly. These foes can be seen in mini demos and extremely early trailers for this title, meaning they must have been removed late in production, either because they were too scary, or just way too big to even face off against. The second is one that looks like it had been abandoned really early in development in the Cug, which is a weird drawn version of a Goomba, where in looking deeper at the game's maps, a single one was discovered within the ground of Pinna Park. This was probably used as a test model, or an early concept for an enemy literally drawn with Bowser Jr.'s paintbrush. But really, to me, it just looks really goofy, and I wish I could have more of it in my life. Nintendo would perfectly return the series to its 2D roots with the release of New Super Mario Bros. For the dual screen system. Having several unused things I definitely want to show off, starting with the very different World Select menu we almost got. Instead of the path map that can be seen in the game, it looks like the original concept would have cycled through each one just by pressing left or right. Looking like actual real life worlds just sort of floating in open space. This actually resembles what the World Select menu would look like in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, where actually I don't mind this concept as it's very different, even if it is a bit barren. Next, I want to look at two specific forms of Mario that didn't make the cut. As in the game's files, there are moments where he can be seen wearing black overalls with a white t-shirt, and white overalls with a white t-shirt. Now there's no indication at all what power Mario would have had in these states, but in my opinion, they sort of make him look like a butler or a blackjack dealer. Next is an interesting unused physics state, where Mario walks around the stage in a zero gravity-like setting, making you run much slower while giving you a much floatier jump. This looks pretty rough when implemented into the stages, and was most likely removed as 1, there's no space-based levels, and 2, it sort of looks awkward as if the game's heavily lagging. Of course, zero-G elements appear many times in different ways across the series, it's just that here it looks like it never really worked. Finally, I just want to mention the really weird ghost enemy cut from the game named Scrupulous Fingor, who seems to use his finger as a way to damage you. What's odd is that when Miyamoto was asked about this strange character, he seemed really upset and just ignored the question. So maybe he was ashamed of it in some way, I'm not really sure. In the space-based Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii, there's actually a ton of unused content the developers left out. So much in fact, I'm just gonna go through the most notable that I've seen people talking about. Here these include the Bully and Big Bully foes, a flame gun that's just a pig-like statue that shoots invisible fire, a scary-looking Iceman that throws chunks of ice at you, a purple version of the Slurple called a Kari Kari, a fake toad-like foe that just looks really terrifying, a Mokina, which is a small whale blob thing that has an affinity for coins, the Octopus Queen, which I think was supposed to be a large piranha plant-like boss, the Starman, which is a black ball with 2 weird little eyes, the Iron Goomba, who just were gonna be immune to your spin attacks, a thing called a Torimoti, which is a blob creature with eyebrows and a very peculiar mouth, an aquatic Spiny that would've just walked around in underwater levels, a larva that looks a lot like the male sheer grub from the Pikmin series, 3 different types of flies that get weirder and weirder the bigger they get, Chico, who's a funny goofy little red star, Tico G, who's a wise old blue star resembling the Millennium Star from Mario Party 3, and finally, a happy-looking radish plant, which I think is a sentient version of that object from Super Mario Bros. 2. There are so many others I had to skip over, so trust me, in the future, I will show them all off, and it'll be worth the wait. The second installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii in 2009, having a lot of unused content I want to mention, starting with a zoom feature that was cool, but very unnecessary. As you can see, this would either allow you to get an extreme close-up of your character, or an amazing view of the entire stage you're playing in. But clearly its inclusion would have just been a novelty, and doesn't really add anything of value to the gameplay. Next up are the large amount of random objects that have been found in the game's files, and have become playable via mods, where I just quickly want to go through each one and how they function. These are the bizarre rotating platforms that also move around very erratically, a portal that when used would have let you access behind the stage where you could have found goodies and secrets, literal water current, which means there was probably a river stage that was cut where you would have had to traverse on moving platforms towards the end, very funny climbing Koopas who would have been found in mountain levels scaling the ledges to get in your way, a giant coin that would have given you 10 coins each time you collected it, and has its own very cool little animation, an ominous cloud that causes instant death when it was touched, and finally, just normal looking clouds that fall down on the stage, but for some reason only in the background and they wouldn't have obscured your view. The second of the space-based sub-series also came out for the Wii, but this time in 2010, where in just looking at the E3 trailer, you'll notice a ton of things that never made the final cut. Some of the most noteworthy are a planet shaped like Mario's head that was most likely an early version of Starship Mario, Yoshi showing up in the Cloudy Court Galaxy despite not being there in the actual game, a big homing chomp that would have been a boss in the Battle Belt Galaxy, a strange wood slide stage that I think in the end was integrated into the Tall Trunk Galaxy, Goombas appearing in the Supermassive Galaxy where in the game they're nowhere to be seen, a cutscene where there's a bunch of ships coming out of a portal, and finally, a much emptier version of the Snowfield planet of the Freezy Flake Galaxy. I also just wanted to mention unused character animations that really play with how Mario's bones work, looking like he could have turned into a dry bones-like entity. Now, I'm not sure if this was going to be via power-up or because of some sort of Magic Koopa spell, but either way, I totally get why it wasn't kept in, as seeing Mario die in this way would have terrified me as a kid. Nintendo would perfectly blend aspects of the 2D and 3D realms with the release of Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS. Having one huge unused thing, which all actually has to do with the title of the game. That's because during the earlier trailers, including the one they released for E3, the game was just simply called Super Mario, with them even going as far as even creating a logo for this really basic name. I think I even remember seeing this at the time and being very confused over why they decided to go with the title that would also confuse people. So I'm glad they added the words 3D and land to it to better exemplify what's exactly going on. The third installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series, oddly given the moniker of being the second, was released for the 3DS in 2012. Having a couple things I want to look at in the context of this video, starting with an interesting unused roulette switch block. These blocks would have flashed back and forth between being red and blue, where when hit, a red coin would have spawned out of the corresponding block. This is sort of an awkward mechanic, as I'm not sure what the end goal of how this would have been implemented would have been. And really, I think it was just scrapped as it's not necessarily that fun. The other thing I want to look at is an enemy in the gold version of a Spawny that would have been transformed from a regular Spawny when the gold rings were activated. In the actual game, if you trigger this, then the Spawny just turns into coins. So clearly somewhere along the way something changed, probably due to the lack of interactivity with this foe. The final installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii and then was later re-released in a deluxe version on the Switch, where there's many unused things I want to look at, with the first being a few backgrounds that didn't make it into the game. These are actually the grasslands, cave, and castle backgrounds from the new Super Mario Bros. Wii entry, which might have just been used as placeholders until they created this game's versions, which are very different, of course with much better visuals. Next are these very out of place floating / jumping mushroom platforms that in some cases go up so high they actually leave the screen entirely. I'm going to have to assume these are scrapped very late into development, as they even implemented this little shaking animation when they're jumped on. Although, I guess they didn't put too much effort into it, as the design is a bit lazy looking. One thing I think should have made the game are the up, down, left, right platforms, being one long thing that you can stand on, being made up of individual different platforms. This means that depending on which section you're standing on, then that's the way the entire platform is going to move, which I believe would have made an amazing elevator-like level, but I digress. Next in the series is Super Mario 3D World, which also was initially released on the Wii U, then later would be re-released on the Switch, having one unused feature that would have greatly changed the gameplay of the Captain Toad stages, and allowing him to use boxes. I believe this was only the cannon and propeller ones, and really I don't think they belong in the realm of the non-jumping Captain Toad, as both of them would have just gave him too much of an advantage and would have made things really unfun. Up next is the absolutely massive Super Mario Odyssey Nintendo Switch entry, having a few unused things that we can look at, starting with the harder Moon Kingdom tracing game. Apparently instead of drawing a circle, the challenge would have been to walk and trace out a star, which I would say would have made getting this moon almost impossible, as I already had enough trouble doing the normal challenge as it is. Next is the early version of Luigi that was later changed to the unique style that he has as the host of his own Balloon World, where you can see they had him in his much more normal looking attire. Frankly, I like the bow tie and fancy overalls much more, and I'm glad they took the extra time to really polish up his looks. Finally, I just want to look at a very funny capturable test model that is called the Corn Boy, having some really amazing mechanics that I wish they found a way to keep in the game. That's because in this strange form, you can charge up your blocky head until it squishes down, where then you can release it, which allows you to jump a considerable distance, which is just an amazing sight. I'm really not sure what Mario enemy this was going to be at the end of the day, but it would have led to some really interesting platforming moments, especially in Luigi's Balloon World. Next to come out is the Bowser's Fury game mode, that was bundled alongside Super Mario 3D World's re-release for the Switch, where I really only could find one thing that was left unused in this entry, in the Mega Mushroom power-up. Now, this Mega Mario form still does exist, as if you take damage in Giga Cat form, then you revert to that normal, well, big Mario before losing a life or finding another Giga Bell. I think this method makes more sense than having 2 power-ups to choose from, where obviously most people would just go for the more powerful one. Plus, this game already is super laggy, so reducing the amount of things on screen was probably the right move. The final and most recent to come out in the franchise is Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that was released for the Nintendo Switch in 2023. Where there's one pretty major thing that was omitted that I'm surprised didn't make the final product, in Bowser Jr.'s Clown Car. This would have acted very similarly to the way it did in New Super Mario Bros. U. And that sameness is probably the reason it wasn't implemented in this game after all. I think Nintendo actually listened to fans for once, and realized that a lot of their boss fights were pretty much the exact same across every entry. And even though they are easy in this one, they are at least somewhat different, as the Kid Koopa powers up with the Wonder Flower, being able to change things in the stage to make things more interesting. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to my channel. Also, please go follow my Instagram at CopyCatGamer. There I upload some cool clips and items for my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!